What did you just say? My son. My Daniel. My boy. What happened to him? What exactly happened? Where is he? How did this happen? Please, I need you to tell me that my son is okay. Just say he's fine, please. Can't take this. I'm coming right now. Please, just hold on, I'm on my way, I'll be there soon. Doctor. Nurse. Where is my son? Where is Daniel? Please, I need to see him. Take me to my son right now. He just left the house to go to school not too long ago. How could this happen? Please take me to him. Someone, anyone, please tell me what's going on. I need to see my son, please. Mr. Felix's heart raced as he was led into the principal's office, surrounded by furious students. His face, once filled with arrogance, was now clouded with terror. He hadn't thought his actions would lead to this, a nightmare unfolding before him. Inside the office, he sat alone in the silent room, his hands trembling, his gaze darting nervously towards the door. Outside, students huddled in groups, whispering anxiously. Some cried, others stared at the ground, lost in shock. News had spread swiftly. Daniel had collapsed and was unresponsive. Prayers mixed with sobs as hope felt too fragile to grasp. The principal, face hard as stone, his eyes sharp and piercing as he shut the door. He took a long, deep breath, then fixed his gaze on Mr. Felix, who sat there trembling. Mr. Felix, the principal began, his voice cold, each word measured and sharp. What on earth have you done? Mr. Felix's hands shook, his face pale. I didn't mean for it to go this far, he mumbled, his voice barely above a whisper. He just wouldn't listen. I thought some discipline would set him straight. The principal's eyes narrowed, his expression darkening with anger. Discipline, he thundered, slamming his fist on the desk so hard that Mr. Felix flinched. You think this is discipline? Beating a child until he collapses? Tell me, Mr. Felix, do you even understand what you've done? Mr. Felix looked down, unable to meet the principal's gaze. I was just trying to make him learn respect, sir. He wasn't following instructions. The principal leaned forward, his voice now a mix of frustration and sadness. Respect, Mr. Felix, does not come from fear. You think beating a student will earn you respect. You think causing pain teaches discipline. Discipline is about guidance, not violence. Respect is earned through compassion, through patience, through understanding. He shook his head, disappointment etched across his face. You have not only failed this child, Mr. Felix, but you have failed yourself as a teacher. Mr. Felix looked up briefly, guilt and confusion clouding his eyes. But, back in my day, sir, teachers used the cane and it worked. We feared our teachers, and we respected them. The principal sighed, his tone softening a little. Mr. Felix, times have changed, and so should our methods. Fear is a short-lived motivator. Children might obey out of fear, but they will never truly respect someone who uses fear as a weapon. Real respect is earned when they see that you care for them, that you want to help them grow. Discipline should guide them, teach them right from wrong, not leave them terrified of school. Mr. Felix's shoulders slumped, his arrogance stripped away. I didn't think of it that way, sir. I thought I was doing what was best. The principal shook his head slowly, disappointment in his eyes. You weren't thinking of what was best for the student. You were thinking of what was easy for you. Discipline isn't about taking out our frustrations on them. It's about showing them the way, leading by example, and helping them understand their mistakes. Mr. Felix swallowed, realizing how deeply he had gone wrong. I never wanted to harm him. I just lost control. And that, Mr. Felix, is where you failed as a teacher, the principal continued sternly. Losing control means you put your anger, your frustration, above the safety of your student. A teacher is supposed to be a protector, a guide, someone who understands and leads with patience. Mr. Felix's eyes filled with regret. I understand now, sir. I don't know what to say. "There's nothing you can say that will undo what has happened," the principal replied, his voice steady and serious. "But let this be a lesson to you. Teaching is not about forcing obedience. It's about nurturing growth, helping each student to learn to become better. And yes, that takes patience, time, and sometimes even forgiveness. Every student is a human being with dreams, with fears, with a future." Mr. Felix nodded, his head bowed. I see that now." A knock at the door interrupted them. The school nurse entered, her face pale and eyes red-rimmed. She looked at the principal, her voice breaking as she said, It's bad. He's not breathing on his own. We've called an ambulance, but I don't know if—" Her voice trailed off, tears streaming down her cheeks. The principal's fists clenched. He glared at Mr. Felix, his voice trembling with rage. "This isn't just about discipline. This is a child's life, a future destroyed by your cruelty." Mr. Felix buried his face in his hands, his body shaking as he grasped the weight of his actions. Faint ambulance sirens pierced the air, growing louder, bringing hope to some and dread to others. As the paramedics loaded Daniel into the ambulance, his classmates watched, some whispering prayers, others too stunned to speak. The boy who once laughed with them was now fighting for his life. At the hospital, Daniel's mother, Mrs. Naomi, arrived breathless, her face pale as she ran to the emergency room. She watched helplessly as doctors rushed her son into surgery, his small body lying so still. Tears filled her eyes as she clutched her chest, a deep, unbearable fear spreading through her heart. Her only child, her hope, lay beyond those doors, silent. "Please, God," she whispered, falling to her knees. "Save my son. He's all I have, all I live for." Inside the ICU, Daniel's weak pulse flickered as doctors fought to stabilize him. Hours passed, and when Mrs. Naomi was finally allowed to see him, she felt her knees give way at the sight of her son hooked up to countless machines. She grasped his cold hand, whispering, "Daniel, my love, my hope. You must fight, my son. You promised to take care of me. Don't leave me, please." Days turned into weeks, each one agonizing. Every day, Mrs. Naomi sat beside Daniel's bed, holding his hand, praying harder than she had ever prayed. She spoke to him as though he could hear, recounting memories, promises, and dreams. "You wanted to be a doctor, Daniel," she whispered one evening. "You said you'd make me proud. Please don't leave me alone." Daniel's classmates visited often, filling the hospital room with whispers of encouragement. "Daniel," one of them said, holding back tears, "we need you. Come back." Then, one quiet morning after a month of prayers and tears, Mrs. Naomi felt a faint twitch in his hand. Her heart leaped, her hands trembling as she looked at her son. "Daniel," she whispered, holding her breath. Slowly, his eyes fluttered open. He blinked, his gaze focusing on her face. A small, tired smile appeared on his lips as he whispered, "Mama." Mrs. Naomi's tears flowed freely, this time from overwhelming joy. "Oh, thank God. My son, you came back." She held him, careful of the wires, whispering words of gratitude and love. As days passed, Daniel grew stronger. News of his recovery spread through the town, a beacon of hope. But as the days slowly passed, Daniel's strength returned, little by little. His recovery was like a miracle, bringing joy to his friends, family, and everyone in the town who had been praying and hoping for him to wake up. When news of his improvement spread, it became a symbol of hope, reminding people of the power of resilience and prayer. Many parents and students felt relieved, as though a dark cloud had finally lifted. However, alongside the joyous news of Daniel's recovery, another story took root in the town, a story of Mr. Felix's inevitable downfall. The teacher who had once been feared and respected had now lost everything. For years, Mr. Felix had ruled over students with an iron fist, believing that his harsh methods were necessary to maintain discipline. But his actions had finally caught up with him, and the same community that once kept silent in fear was now standing firmly against him. Parents, students, and even fellow teachers came forward one by one, speaking out against Mr. Felix's cruelty. In the courtroom, students bravely shared their stories, describing how they had lived in fear of his strict, often violent punishments. Some parents confessed that they had once been too afraid to challenge Mr. Felix, fearing retaliation against their children. But after what happened to Daniel, their silence turned into a collective voice for justice. Mr. Felix listened as parent after parent, teacher after teacher, and student after student recounted the years of fear they had endured. He sat in silence, his head hung low, realizing that the respect he thought he commanded was only fear, and now even that was gone. The court handed down a punishment that ensured Mr. Felix would never work as a teacher again. His teaching license was permanently revoked, and he was barred from working with children in any capacity. The job he had built his entire life around was taken away from him, and the community that once greeted him with respect now saw him with disdain and anger. He would never again be trusted to guide young minds, and the respect he had once demanded had turned to scorn. Mr. Felix's punishment went beyond a simple job loss. It was as if he had been stripped of his very identity. Teaching had been his life, the only thing he felt he was meant to do. His life took another turn which he caused. In the weeks that followed, Aluu Grammar School transformed. The once oppressive halls now echoed with laughter and joy. New teachers replaced the fear with kindness and guidance. Discipline came through conversations, not canes. On the day Daniel returned to school, his friends surrounded him with cheers and hugs. One friend, Emeka, beamed. "You're back. We missed you." Daniel smiled, feeling grateful. "I missed you too," he replied softly. At a special assembly, the principal addressed the students, his voice filled with hope. "This is a new beginning. From today, this school will be a place of learning and respect. No more fear." The students cheered, their hearts light. Daniel sat among them, feeling a sense of peace and gratitude. His mother's words echoed in his mind, filling him with determination. "You have so much to live for, my son.